This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas.
Good morning, true seekers and true crime junkies. Welcome back to another episode of Finding the Zodiac. Or I'm sorry, hit the road, Jack, Finding the Zodiac. I'm a little discombobulated. I thought I was going to start this show out today with a rant, but I found out just a few minutes ago that YouTube is blocking people based on statements that they've made. So I'll probably refrain and check my statements before I make them to make sure it's not a reason that we get censored or our freedom of speech is hindered by YouTube not posting this. So we are going to see this live everywhere else except for on our Talk 4 TV today. Anyways, I'd like to introduce Harriet Suchet to the show.
Yes, good morning. I'm here.
Good morning.
Rattling earthquakes yesterday.
I heard that.
In my area yesterday.
I got an email in regards.
45 seconds.
Oh, so you felt it really well. So I did get an email.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm just stuck on the earthquakes yesterday, but yeah, I'm here. My head's here.
Well, I was trying to say that I received an email in regards to at least one of the earthquakes. I didn't feel any of them. So, well, I did feel an earthquake in the parking garage, but I thought that was just the cars that were actually moving through it. And that's likely what I felt was the movement of the garage with the massive amount of traffic that was coming into it. But I didn't actually feel any. So I'm glad you're safe. Nothing shook off the walls?
Oh, yeah. No, just I was screaming at the phone like a lot of people were apparently. Okay, enough already, because we thought it was just one earthquake. We got the 3 alerts and the tsunami alert in this area. So, can you imagine your screeching phone for about a minute?
Well, yeah, that's kind of annoying. But what was the tsunami? Did that hit?
They said that they thought there might be a tsunami because the main big earthquake, which was 7.3 off the coast, about 80 miles from here and 161 miles from San Francisco. But they said that was strong. And then you had the other 2 earthquakes, a 6.0 in, oh my God, Eureka, and then an earthquake in Cobb. So, you got those 3 earthquakes. So they sent out the tsunami alert. A witness that I know, but I didn't talk to by phone, said that they saw the ocean by San Francisco looking really weird, but no tsunami. So,
well, I'm still waiting for that oceanfront property. So if you want to move this direction, we can enjoy it. If that part of California falls off into the ocean.
You know what? And my focus was, and I'll just try to be brief, was I was intending to go get milk at the store. So I had already grabbed my phone and I had this purse on, and I'm, just thinking, okay, enough with the earthquake, please. I need to go get milk.
Oh boy. Don't let the earthquake stop you from getting your milk.
I'm looking at the tree, and the tree outside a window is like, practically starting to swirl, and I said, well, maybe this is a serious earthquake. Anyways, moving back to the show.
And I'm just going to skip past my rant. I'm going to check to make sure I don't have any unauthorized words in it before I spit that one out, because it really literally covers politics, politicians, and the presidencies of the past.
Well,
Ah,
all I know, yeah, I was worried about reading one of those songs because it was pretty loaded for bear. So I hope
gosh.
that doesn't have anything to do with it. But we tried to, brace people. But anyways, yeah, okay, YouTube.
Yeah. Yeah, YouTube. I was gonna say, I thought that I had a YouTuber response in here that I did not get into the actual. Let's see, there it is. There's a YouTube comment. I wanted to actually mention this, and it didn't actually make it into the presentation, but it is, let's see, user CE4EN5JC2D commented on the video. I would sincerely advise you to be very careful with the costume. If it was the one used at Lake Berryessa, it probably will have blood spatter from the knife attack. Make a log of the custody of the container and keep it apart from any contamination. At least this may help to preserve the integrity of it. Oh, yay. Let's welcome Nolan to the show.
Good morning, Nolan.
Good morning, Nolan. We don't have sound yet. Anyways, so back to this hood. So I'm sure that they're commenting on Dennis's Zodiac Killer, The Untold Story, and they don't seem to realize that this was made maybe 9-10 years ago. Just to give you an update on that hood, the hood was turned over to the FBI. It was handled with care, at least by what I could tell in the video, that Dennis had used gloves when he pulled it from the PA system. His reasoning for opening that PA system was that the PA system happened to be something extremely important to Jack. And while it was in Dennis's possession because Jack had given him his all his belongings in a storage shed. I think that was from Arizona. Was that correct, Harriet, where he received Jack's stuff?
I believe so. So he went to go get it and brought it to, I think, where he was staying at the time at Pollock Fines.
Right, correct. And so he brought Jack's belongings with him, and Jack had mentioned to Dennis to make sure that if he got rid of anything, that he didn't get rid of that PA system. He was very explicit on Dennis having and kept that or returning it to Jack for some unknown reason. And at the time, Dennis was not really thinking about what the PA system had meant to Jack. We have heard the solves from Harriet Suchet, who discusses the PA system as a device used to carry not only the hood, as Dennis found it in it, but what were the other items that you stated in the solves that the PA system had carried?
I believe it's numerous times it's saying that her friend, Marjorie Alette, otherwise known as Myrtle Walker, of Lower Lake, by the way, anyways, had the pictures of the NASA autopsy of JFK, the real autopsy. And he was trying to get those pictures, but it looks like along the way, he's saying he became a fan of Janis Joplin, so just somehow pilfered the whole PA system. And that's where the hood ends up.
That is where the hood ends up. So Dennis, actually, after Jack had passed, and I want to say it was approximately 2008 when he found the hood, he had pulled the PA system out. He had questioned why it was so important to Jack, and he decided to open that PA system up from the rear. In doing so, when he pulled it open, he found a folded black piece of material. Unsure of what that was, he actually lifted it out of the PA system and was able to see that it is a likeness of the described hood that was used at the Lake Berryessa murders. This was turned over to the FBI. As far as I know, the FBI claimed that they did not find any type of DNA or blood or any sweat or anything on this particular hood, but they did confirm that it was made out of. They did confirm that it was made out of a. Okay, hold on. Let me get to that. This is my recollection. So if you know something different, I'll let you speak. Hold on. What they did verify was that it was a juke fabric that was pre-existing the Zodiac cases. So I find it hard to believe that Dennis Kaufman, in all of his infinite wisdom, because he didn't sometimes seem to be the smartest person, would have been able to have hunted down a material that was predating those murders 35, 40, almost 40 years later, or to make it into a likeness of what is described by Brian Hartnell as a square-shaped top hood, holes where the glasses clipped on, which we could see those holes in the actual hood. Now, what did you say that they found on it?
I believe I ran into the Lake County Sheriff's worker that was also living in Clear Lake, who was all excited and said, "Oh, we talked about the Zodiac cases." And she said they found the fibers matched what was on Brian Hartnell's door. So because that hood ends up at one point at the Nampa Sheriff's Department, and she said that the fibers matched what was on Brian Hartnell's door. And then I heard nothing from this Sheriff's Department person ever again. And when I described her to Dennis, he said that's the lady that he believed was part of the protocol of the series of events to get it to the lake, from Lake County, or all these county areas, through Sacramento, through Lake County. They had to do this protocol of events to end up in Napa County. So that's what I remember, all the jubilation of the fibers matching what was on Brian Hartnell's door.
Well, that would explain
Napa
then.
County still had.
Go ahead, Nolan.
Yes. Isn't it true that Dennis tried to get the hood back and the FBI wouldn't give it back?
Correct. And that's what I was just going to say. That might explain why it wasn't returned, because albeit the FBI indicated that they didn't find any material on it or DNA, which doesn't really answer the question as to whether or not they found a match in fibers on Brian Hartnell's car, but would explain why it hadn't been returned after they did not discover any evidence that would have linked or tied it to a particular individual. So yes, go ahead.
Why on Brian Hartnell's car? Why would the Zodiac hood fibers be on his car?
Because he went to the car. He went to the car and he wrote on it. So he wrote on the door.
That's right. He wrote the dates. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. So yes, he's had contact, and obviously if he's in this hood, the fibers will be on his hands. So if he's then started writing on the car door, those fibers could have transferred fairly easily. Okay. That's a very interesting. You just gave me goosebumps, Harriet, because I didn't know that little piece of information till just now. All right, so back in. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say something really quickly. It's a few years later that I believe it's the same sheriff department girl that worked for Napa had her storage unit and my storage unit were both broken into. That was also one of the old storage unit places that Dennis had his Zodiac cases at. So I just wanted to throw that in there too. So it's like somebody was looking for something, maybe the hood.
And let me add one more time, because I'm sure I've discussed this in the past. When I took the fingerprint class, it was a 40-hour class of learning to make identification in fingerprints. I met up with and have subsequently become friends with their former fingerprint analysis tech, which she would go to the crime scenes, lift the prints, come back, do the comparisons to determine whether or not they belong to a particular suspect. And I discussed with her being able to do a comparison of Jack's thumbprint on his military records, because we had good ridge value, we had the deltas, we had the center portion, everything stood out. I think that there's more than enough information to make a identification if we had a good thumbprint that was actually the Zodiac killers. We could not get any of the detectives, cold case or otherwise, to even allow us to do this. And I was asking her to do it, or just get me a copy, for heaven's sakes, of the fingerprints that they have on file. I'll do it as the assessment outside of that if Napa Sheriff's Department doesn't want to expend the resources for it. But that also takes me back to when Dennis and I went down and visited the Napa Sheriff's Department. We had two people, one from Napa Police Department and one from the Sheriff's Department, who were they were given grants. The police departments were given grants to investigate cold cases. So we took the information and our handwriting exams in. We sat down and spoke to them. They did not want me to give them the presentation, and I know that they're not handwriting experts. So for whatever reason, they declared there was not enough information in this case to pursue any further, or put forth any more expenditures towards this case. which to me sounds silly because I'm bringing you the evidence that you need. I'm bringing you, and the work has been done. The cost has been expended, and they refuse to allow us to give them the presentation or even reopen that because they declared there were evidence in other cases that were there was more evidence in other cases that they felt that those resources could be expended towards. So the Napa Sheriff's Department, the Napa Police Department has really kind of failed us on a couple levels here. And to me, again, it just comes back to this whole idea of the control of keeping this thing silent, which I intended to start this presentation talking about. I had started watching the new JonBenet Ramsey docuseries, and I was just absolutely blown away with the inadequacy and the ineptness of the law enforcement, including the investigator who then turned around, wrote a book, and then found himself civilly sued for that information as slander, where he was blaming the Ramseys for being the killer of their own child or sibling, even knowing that as early as January of 1997, they had cleared the Ramseys by DNA. But this particular investigator declared that the DNA was faulty somehow, and he perpetuated and continued the notion that the Ramseys were guilty for this. The media played a big role in it, and I'm again disgusted, just like the media with Arthur Lee Allen and blaming the wrong person. Their whole thought process of we're just going to put this information out there and demise somebody in the eyes of the public without having the truth blows me away. And I have to go back to what is there to gain for these individuals. You've got police who are willing to make proclamations that are not true. You have the media that is outright lying about situations and evidence in the case. Sorry. So it really just takes me back to what the Napa Police Department and the Sheriff's Department is doing in order to facilitate the continuation of this mystery, when they could simply stop us in our tracks if they'd allow us to do the proper examinations to determine whether or not Jack is the suspect they're looking for. Okay.
Well, no wonder Jack said that Kenny Narlo was shitty. He knew something pretty bad about Ken Narlo. Ken Narlo was, as much as I hate to say it, people, he was an angel by day, but a devil at night. So Jack had a lot of things on. That could be it too.
Well,
we really bring down Ken Narlo, we kind of bring us down too.
Well, any bringing down of the police department obviously opens up skepticism in the public's eye in regards to any other cases they claim to have solved. Part of my rant last night was talking about Bush having pardoned Henry Lee Lucas, who, in cahoots with the Texas Rangers, attempted to close over 200 unsolved murders across the United States. Why did the Rangers feel the necessity or need to facilitate this type of propaganda and this misconception to the public? I have no idea. They were busted by an attorney who found that Henry Lee Lucas he had inside information, just like John Mark Carr in the JonBenet Ramsey case, inside information to these cases he couldn't have had unless he was the killer or unless it had been fed to him by the Texas Rangers. And this attorney then suffered the attack of the IRS. Other attorneys were threatened to lose their status as attorneys if they didn't turn evidence or attempt to lie about this attorney, when he, in fact, was an extremely good, honest DA. So he was put through the ringer, just like the Ramseys were, for wanting to expose these individuals for that truth. Disgusting. Anyways, my rant. So we're at Christmas 1978. We have pictures of Gary in Texas. Gary is Jack's nephew, correct, Harriet?
I believe so, yes.
And Gary is the one that had come forward and stated that he knew of Jack attempting to kill a man in Vallejo and getting off on it because he claimed, I think he tried to run him over or he stabbed him. There was a couple stories, I think I've told him a few back, but it is in Dennis's book where Gary talks about these instances of Jack's dastardly deeds, including the attempts to kill people or having killed people, claiming self-defense. Also the attempt of a rape that he and his son proclaimed occurred on a particular night of a female. So there are a few things there that Gary had shared, but I did find these pictures and it shows that it's with Alethea, which must be his daughter, Christmas of 1978. This is in, again, Nora's handwriting. So this would make me believe that they are in Texas with Jack and Nora at the time these pictures are taken. So we know that Jack is in Texas until Christmas of 1978. And in Seguin, Texas, which is the general location, it's approximately 2 hours and 49 minutes, which is a similar kill zone for Jack in California when he's in South Lake Tahoe or in Nyack, moving out towards the Bay Area for these murders, or Santa Rosa. And when you look at that circumference, it's approximately 2 to 2.5 hours open. And that's the same kill zone that we're seeing in the I-45 murders where Jack's proximity is. And Jack's brother and his mother's living here at that time, but Jack's good friend and father of his son, Charles, we just talked about Charles, who was born November of 1978. He dated a girl named Crystal, which was the daughter of one of Jack's good friends, who lived in the zip code right next to Tim Miller in the League City deaths. And we have the letter that is mailed, the cutout letters in 2005 that is mailed to Tim Miller in regards to the murder of his daughter. And so we found all of this out because, of course, Tim Miller was convinced that it couldn't have been Jack who mailed the letter. He was currently at that time living in Washington, but then it came to light while Tim Miller had gone on a trip to Jack's aunt's house in Texas. He flew Dennis out to Texas. They went to visit the aunt. The aunt confirmed that Jack, in fact, was in Texas in September of 2005, which is when this letter was actually mailed. So here again, one of these outstanding coincidences that puts Jack in the proximity and the area of being able to have mailed this letter in regards to Tim Miller's daughter's death. So that was just a little caveat there. December 1978, we do have a possible death date of a Mendocino John and Jane Doe off Highway 20, about 13 miles from Willits. This is near to James Creek. Both teenagers were not related. Jane was 14 years old. John was 13 years old. There was an extra tooth not found to be the victims, found with the remains, but no other remains were found. From here on out, with the League City deaths, with deaths back here, the unsolved murders back here in California, and then there are a couple other crimes around the United States where we start to see body parts that don't belong to victims that are either in shallow graves with those victims. And so this one stood out to me because we found extra remains that were not. And that makes me want to go back to this particular case and say, hey, was this the tooth of Donna Lass? Do we know if the skull that they found had the teeth in it? Because I think one of your solves, Harriet, said the teeth were removed, correct?
Yeah. The teeth were in one place, the skull put in another area by 80 and 20.
So he's dropping little clues, little hints, just like the Zodiac proclaimed in his letters, that you're going to find clues and hints. I'm leaving clues, you guys. So maybe that tooth should be examined for DNA against Donna Lass as well. So I visit the I-45 League City deaths where extra body parts are found in graves. In fact, Tim Miller even indicated that there were extra, I believe, hands found in shallow graves of murder victims. And those hands did not belong, obviously. So it was an extra set of hands basically found in the grave. So we'll do a little bit of background on this. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I got a lot of those solves, and I believe that's Craven. That's Allison Craven's hands, and that had to do with it had to do with Robert Abel and some dirty people in NASA. She had a uncle that worked for NASA. Craven.
Well, we do show that
I went over those quite well, and it is pretty gruesome.
Yes. Well, we do show that the authorities identified Jane Doe found near Mendocino and Lake County boundary 44 years ago. So they were able to identify Jane Doe, but not John Doe. And here's some background just to catch everybody up. Mendocino County authorities still do not know the identities of the two children murdered in 1978, whose bodies were dumped along a remote stretch of Highway 20. So again, we got that Highway 20 relation between Willits and Fort Bragg. State-of-the-art technology has now provided new faces for these children, hoping to find out who they were and where they came from. Without this basic knowledge, finding justice for these two children has reached a dead end. Anyone recognizing these children should contact the Mendocino County Sheriff's Office at 707-463-4086. Jane and John Doe were likely murdered in December of 1978. this would be my time frame in which Jack would be coming back to California to land a new spot to live for the family, because again, he likes to travel without the family to find the new residence. Then he comes back, and it is my belief that he may take the opportunity to commit a crime while he's there. Then he skedaddles out while everything is hot and the heat is on, back to wherever it is where the family is, and then eventually moves back in with the family, making it look like he's a good family man who just moved from another location and wouldn't possibly be considered for the crimes. Very good little scheme he has set up there. Jane and John Doe were likely murdered in December of 1978. Jane was about 14 years old and John was about 13. The two are not related. Both teens had light brown hair. Detectives found a pierced ear hoop earring ornamented with a small carved bird and some duct tape with the remains. Little else is known. So just one. A pierced. So they found one earring. So this is also similar to the Santa Rosa murders, where an earring had been removed from victims. And this was something one of the Santa Rosa sheriffs were actually looking into with Dennis, because Dennis had single earrings, one earring out of each set. And I think there were about 4 different earrings that we've shown in the podcast already, that was in Jack's little, we called his dastardly box, because it had things like the pilot felt pen. It had pre-cut lengths of cord that was described by his son Charles to have been something that Jack always carried it in the trunk of his car, not big enough to actually tie anything down, but he never really understood why they were there. The teens' scattered skeletal remains were found in steep terrain just off Highway 20, about 13 miles west of Willits at 5:30 p.m. on Sunday, July 8th, 1979. So almost 7 months later. The man who discovered the remains pulled off the highway following a domestic spat and took a hike to cool off. He ventured into the heavily overgrown area next to the roadway, not far from James Creek. He spotted a human skull and called police. At the dump sites, deputies recovered the skeletal remains of 2 teenagers scattered by animals. At first, the coroner did not know whether the children were male or female. No children were reported missing in the Mendocino County area, leading detectives to believe the 2 teens were runaways from another region. And then again, this is that link analysis issue where time, space, and proximity is what keeps cases from being solved, because they're not working with other agencies to determine where these children came from. Some have speculated the two were hitchhiking when they were murdered. For years, detectives believed the 2 children were related, perhaps brother and sister. This has since been proven false. Eventually, the 2 children were buried without fanfare in the Russian River Cemetery in Ukiah. Newspaper reporter on this case at the time was the results of the CAT scan from Jane Doe, which was used as the basis of the skull reconstruction image. The BBC magazine followed this case throughout the identification effort at www.bbc.co.uk/news/magazine-1852936. TWN mentioned the find in a few paragraphs, but then nothing. The Ukiah Daily Journal had a few more mentions, but when detectives became stumped, there was nothing new to report. For nearly 33 years, the case has remained ice cold. After 20 years, detectives used new DNA technology to determine that children were not related. A forensic artist with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Haven't you talked about this organization, Harriet?
Yeah. Starts out pretty bad, according to the many things I was coming up with. It starts out with good intentions, but John Reve Walsh, even according to their own daughter, saying it's just like a database and a place to where cases end up cold and kids can end up missing, and it's a way to it's just pretty bad.
So basically,
they need to get rid of it.
Gotcha. Well, it says here in this particular case, it was beneficial. They crafted facial reconstructions of the 2 children. These images were placed on its website, and Jane and John Doe were introduced via the internet to a much wider audience. Despite this broadened exposure, the public failed to identify these children. The scans detailed three-dimensional images were transferred to forensic imaging specialist Joe Mullins at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children to create a skull reconstruction image. Mullins applied his 13 years experience in this field to reconstruct the faces and features of these two children. This new software has been available for 6 years, says Mullins. So far, he has done about 40 reconstructions of this type, and Mullins anticipates a surge of demand for the technique as successes mount. He and others in the field have been working with hospitals and medical examiners all over the county to CAT scan the remains of unidentified skeletons to aid in identifying them. This new technique takes about half the time of traditional clay buildup method. The clay method uses the actual skull as the basis for the reconstruction. Images used in the new digital process can be shipped electronically. This technique was used to identify the remains of Stephanie Quezada, 20, who was murdered in Southgate, California in 2005. Where's Southgate? Does anybody know?
No. There's an area known as Southgate in South Sacramento, but
really?
I think it's a different place.
Huh. Because if they were taken in South Sacramento and Jack was moving back to California, we do know that he moved back to Sacramento. So that may, if that Southgate reference is correct, then again, I put this back into the onus that could have been when Jack returned to look for the new place to live for the family. It says, even though there was an artist's sketch of the unidentified woman circulated at the time, no one apparently recognized her from the sketch. In 2008, a three-dimensional image was generated through this technique, and someone recognized her within days of its release. Her identity was confirmed by DNA evidence months later. Mullins says that about half of the reconstructions he has done have been tentatively identified and are now awaiting DNA confirmation. As scientists were examining the skulls of Mendocino County's Jane and John Doe, they discovered an extra tooth which did not belong to either child. This prompted the exhumation of the rest of their remains. Forensic anthropologist Dr. Rick Snow assisted with the exhumation and examination of the remains. He confirmed the conclusions reached by the original coroner regarding age and sex of the victims. There were no extra bones belonging to a third party commingled with the buried remains. Whether this extra tooth is the remnant of a third body from the suspect or a random inclusion has not yet been determined. So.
Just a quick comment.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
A little bit on Donna Lass's skull. That just reminds me that the B writer that wrote the article on the discovery of the skull and identifying it as her has not gotten back to me. So I'm going to reach out again and try and talk to that reporter about that story about Donna Lass's skull.
Again, why wouldn't they want more information? Why wouldn't they want to firm up their article? Right. I don't understand media's intentions.
Maybe they can, you'd want to do a follow-up article if we have information to share with them or they have information to share with us. And I had questions about the article to pose to him, but anyway, that's a whole different story.
And I just misstated the Southgate thing. So the Stephanie Quezada, 20-year-old, was murdered in Southgate, California in 2005. So she is not Jane Doe and John Doe. I thought this was an identification of one of these individuals. It was not. So the proximity to the murders in the area is more related to the Jane Doe and John Doe of Mendocino. And that brings us to 1979. We're moving right along. In January of 1979, Dewhurst's book has Jack returning to California. He says Jack returns to California, lives on Auburn Boulevard, Sacramento, California, where eventually the new site for the FBI Field Office in Sacramento will be. Dennis's book also shows the same thing. He says, we arrive in Sacramento, California, January 1979, and rent a trailer space on Auburn Boulevard. This is the first time we moved back to California since 1976. This was another thing that fit into the Zodiac timeframe. In Robert Graysmith's book, Zodiac, he has a list of what he believes to be Zodiac victims. What I found interesting about his list was the dates of the murders. Graysmith lists a total of 49 murders from 1966 through 1981. From 1968 until 1975, he lists a sequence of murders. In 1975, they suddenly stop until February of 1979. There were no suspected murders attributed to the Zodiac during the years we were living in another state. We left California. Ooh, I'm getting goosebumps. We left California in 1976 and we returned January 1979. The next murder attributed to the Zodiac is February 1979 in Sacramento, California. Whether Graysmith was right or not, it fit Jack perfectly.
Yeah, Teresa Matthews. I found some of my old Zodiac stuff when I was unpacking things. So
right, we're about to climb into him. He is absolutely correct. In the chronological ordering of my presentation, we are about to run smack dab into another mess of murders that are Zodiac-esque while Jack is back in California. I did place in here a FOIA file reference San Francisco Airtel to the Bureau attention, the FBI laboratory, dated 11/12/69. I don't know. So this was being sent February 15th of 1979. It looks like they are enclosed for the FBI laboratory our work page containing transposition, substitution, ciphers relating to a letter from the Zodiac dated 11/7/69, postmarked 11/8/69, 7 pages of worksheets relating to the decoding of the Zodiac message, 1 page setting out a typed summary of the 7 pages mentioned from a publication making reference to the fact that National Security Agency and CIA have assigned their crypto analysis personnel to breaking the Zodiac code. So this individual is actually sending in his version of breaking the code for the 340. And I sent this to you, right, Harriet?
I believe so. Yeah. It's supposed to be, but it's something that I think Graysmith also used to do a version of his code breaking in his original Zodiac, which is talking about Lake County and things like that. So,
and they literally redacted whoever it was on this FOIA file. It does indicate a business telephone number, a home telephone number, but it doesn't actually tell you what those numbers are or who the person is. It says this person telephonically contacted Sergeant McKinnon of San Francisco, indicating that he had thought he had broken the Zodiac code in connection with the message postmarked 11/8/69. He was contacted by, I'm going to say either San Francisco. It looks like McKinnon again is typed out. I see an ON at the end of the redaction on February 13th of 1979 and furnished the material, which is enclosed for the FBI lab, and requested that a confirmation be made on his findings. Now, I did not find a message that he literally came out with, but I did attempt to apply the symbols and the substitution of the actual letters of the alphabet to the 340 cipher to determine whether or not it came up with a message. I did not come up with a complete message, but I did come up with words that could be perceived as Herb Cain, which we know that we just came off of a letter to Herb Cain. I give them hell too, were specific words that came out. These fools. Again, fools is used several times in the Zodiac communications without it being a solve by Harriet. You can actually see them in the messages. And we've even had Lauren Swearingham, who has done solves, and he's come up with the word fools as well. So it seems to be something that is recreated each time another person attempts to make this solve. I don't know who this person is yet again, but if you have a chance to look at that and see what you can make out of it, Harriet, that would be awesome. That leads us right on into, go ahead.
Okay. I was just going to say, I think that's very much what that time frame is when Graysmith claims that he came up with a substitution cipher style message, and it's in his original book. So he might be that secret person that they redacted, and the business address and so on. Yeah.
And not even anything that they confirmed. I think they might have said that Arthur Lee Allen had some books on codes and ciphers, but they didn't show in any way, shape, or form that he was astute in doing them. Like, you didn't give me any evidence that, I mean, a lot of people have books. I've got books I intended to read, didn't mean I read them. And could that later hem me up for some crime because those type of methods were used in the crime? I don't know. But that does bring us to the first murder on February 24th of 1979, as Harriet just stated. Teresa Matthews in Sacramento, found in the Russian River. She was strangled. We do have other girls in rivers. So we had that was the Blau Eva Blau was found in the Russian River area?
No, she was actually, according to the solves that I got, that she was actually killed with Marie Onstay, but her body was transported and dumped in a specific location in Santa Rosa. But so she wasn't in a river, but Marie Onstay and Eva Blau were right next to Futa Creek. That is
okay.
the waterways right there.
There was a waterway.
Yeah.
Okay,
That
there
comes
was a
out
waterway.
of Berryessa. And
What's that?
runs right by Davis Law School.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And UC Davis is where he's purportedly, based on Harriet's solves, receiving help for his what would you call that? Drug problem? Self-induced drug problem?
He's having flashbacks. Something's triggered him, and it's going really crazy. And he's keeping on seeing Frank Olson jumping out the window, and then he's trying to get the rest of the cure. My God, he spends 9 years looking for that. That's what we're seeing. So, yeah.
We know Frank Olson was thrown out of the window. He didn't jump.
Right.
No, he keeps on seeing Frank Olson being pushed out the window. That's the many solves that we've even discussed on the shows, and it's amazing. And that's why I think he's trying to get that help, and it's taking him 9 years to finally get the stuff.
And we just saw that solve here recently, right? The friction tape letter?
Yeah.
Or was that the Herb Cain letter?
But it's where he's saying, "Oh my God," and he's doing a reversal on Jimmy Carter. He says, "I owe you one."
The Carter
you're
letter.
The only one who answered. Yeah, all kinds of that whole time frame. So, but there's more that's coming at you next week. So,
okay,
just hold on to your seat, because that's what we're getting into, is the Atlanta child killer stuff.
Yeah, it's coming up here quick
too.
It's coming up here quick, you guys, and it's kind of astounding. Have you taken a look at the Ghost Killer letter, the cursive written poem that he sends?
No, I haven't seen that one, but I got some stuff on Bob Crane that's linking to the Atlanta child killer stuff, and then I do have the Zodiac Atlanta child killer pages in the envelope, and then something very surprising of a complete anagram of that's supposed to be an FBI. Oh my God, an FBI file, and so multiple times he's saying things that happen, and it's Carter's now involved, but he's not the president anymore. So hang on to your seats, people. Okay,
it's coming. It's coming. We're getting
YouTube.
He's getting really busy these days. So on March, so I don't have a lot of information on Teresa Matthews. Did you have any information on her other than what I stated?
No, but sounding the way it is, it looks like she was involved with probably the same people as Eva Blau and Marie Onstay, because for her to be ending up with no clothes on, it's positioned, the body's positioned a certain way, and the evidence tells a story. So I haven't done her exactly as an evidence solve.
Okay, so then that brings us to March 7th of 1979, Catherine D. Harlan in North Highlands, California. Again, we've got a Sacramento individual. If you're not familiar with the inner cities of Sacramento, North Highlands is pretty much right next to what would be considered Sacramento City. 9 years old, last seen at 7:30 a.m., body discovered just inside Sutter County off Powerline Road, murdered and left in a remote location, as with most of the victims. I thought this was Jack returning to California and claiming his first kill, but we do see Teresa Matthews actually happened before this.
North Highlands is right next to McClellan Air Force Base too. And Jack seems to like to hang out near Air Force bases.
Yes, I didn't think about that, but you are absolutely correct.
And at that time, it was still an operational base. It's closed now.
Right. Right. Well, they still have the VA out there, and I think they still have a BX out there, because I used to take my grandfather to get his groceries and things of that nature. But For the most part, it's not an active military base anymore. And it shows that this is Jack returning to California and claiming a kill in his old neighborhood before he left to Minnesota, and it's not on the murder maps of Betts. So May 10th of 1979, Shuri Dine Bana of Napa, California goes missing. She's found May 18th, 1979, Reservoir Road in Benicia. So again, we've got these cross connections. It's 1 mile from Lake Herman Road turnout. Stabbed 20 or more times, possible strangulation, and blunt force object. Wearing a dark sweater, blue jeans, tennis shoes, and her glasses. Almost a 10-year anniversary to the Lake Herman Road murders. June 6th of 1979. Yeah.
North Highlands. It's really close to the trailer park on Auburn Boulevard. It's near Watt and Auburn is where I believe the trailer park that Dennis is referring to that they got a lot in. And that's just right up Watt Avenue to North Highlands. Really close.
I actually have that mapped out, and it's at Orange Grove Boulevard. So where the FBI Field Office.
That's not far either.
Yeah. No, and in 1979, well, I'll check. We're coming up on it, but I did research and find that the Sacramento Field Office for the FBI moved to the location of the mobile home park where Jack had originally lived at a later date. So when June 6, 1979, we have Tara Cossey from San Pablo, California, 9 years old, disappeared, not to be found, not on murder map of Betts either. So that I had left to research. All of these, actually, I would like to research because there was very limited on the information that I was able to provide in these cases other than they're unsolved. So March 9th of 1981, we have, why is this here so soon? Envelope postmarked Atlanta, Georgia, 3:03 p.m., 8th of March, 1981, bearing the handprinted address, 1611 West Peachtree Street, Northeast, 30308, accompanying a one-page handprinted letter beginning, "Hello, it's me." And I believe this letter goes on to say, "Haven't you figured out who's killing these kitties?" And so this is an associated letter to the Zodiac case because the handwriting is a match. It says on the result of their examination, it could not be determined whether the writer of the Zodiac letter in the case Zodiac extortion prepared the question writing on specimens Q27 and Q28 because of the distortion and unexplained variations. It's called manipulation, folks. He's manipulating handwriting. He's attempting to disguise it. But we do see that letter and the forms are very consistent with the John Benet Ramsey writings. There are various different letters in the collection that it is similar to. So I'm not sure why they came up with this conclusion other than we've got a great distance. They probably don't see that the Zodiac is over here operating in Atlanta when he's clearly over here operating in California at that time. Either way, 1981 is a little ahead of the game, but I did want to say that Dennis claims that in 1979, what's that?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I was just going to say, that's one of the letters that's coming to you very quickly.
Yes,
this one
is coming up. And it was interesting because when I introduced the idea of the Atlanta, Georgia child killer cases and letters to Dennis, it took him some time because, again, he wasn't trying to wrap his mind around all of these other locations and unsolved murders. He really was kind of focused and just trying to stay strictly on the Zodiac. But at one point in time, it jogged a memory inside of him. And he claimed that from 1979 to 1981, that Jack would take him and his friend camping frequently at Loon Lake for a week at a time, and Jack would leave him there for days in a row. No one but them knew Jack had left, not even Nora. So Jack would then have the freedom to travel to wherever he wanted to in order to facilitate these types of crimes. That puts us down to our basically, we're coming into our last minute. I'm going to try and get a couple more pieces out. I did put a map up here that shows Sacramento, California versus Loon Lake. So it was approximately 2 hours out that Jack would take these boys to. Jack used to pinpoint their location in the woods using an AM radio. He would find the direction of 2 AM stations by turning the radio until the station was gone. And using a compass, he would find magnetic north, and where the 2 lines came together on the map would be their location. So now we have a reference to Jack specifically using magnetic north, which was used on the Mount Diablo map. Is there anything that anybody would like to add at this point as we come into close on
We're
this
still on.
particular. What's that? I can't. I
Oh,
thought I
my bad.
had. What's that?
Go ahead. No, I'm
All right, Harry. Do you guys have anything to add? We're down to our final seconds on here.
have a good
I'm
weekend.
just excited about doing the Atlanta versions of stuff. And I'm like, yeah, that's all
I'll
I
get
can
you-
add right now, because I'm seeing that there's going to be things that are going to rock some people's world.
Perfect.
And,
well, I'm gonna. Okay, I got to
Williams is
close out.
innocent.
Okay, I have to close out. I'll get you those letters, Harriet. Everybody have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next Friday. Take care.
Oh,